A living memory to the most fatal event in history. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum was created to inspire citizens and leaders worldwide to confront issues of hatred, genocide, and denial. Today we are faced with an alarming rise in Holocaust denial, even in the lands where it happened. What is so shocking to our generation is that this incredibly barbaric behavior displayed during World War II took place within the last century. Personally, when I think of the Holocaust, I think of how devastating it must have been to lose family members and friends for such a horrendous and immoral reason. These victims that were burned and brutally murdered were sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, fathers, and mothers. But the most evil that was ever inflicted upon these innocent beings was that they were forgotten. And furthermore, they were ignored. Like the family of world-renowned author Elie Weisel, a Holocaust survivor, he is most widely known for his book, Night, in which he describes in detail his personal experience of the time he spent in the concentration camps. During the creation of the museum, Elie Weisel was named founding chairman. This is an adaptation of the speech he presented at the 1993 dedication ceremony. For the dead and the living, we must bear witness. For not only are we responsible for the memories of the dead, we are also responsible for what we do with those memories. 50 years ago, somewhere in the Carpathian Mountains, a young Jewish woman reads in a Hungarian newspaper a brief account of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Astonished, dismayed, she wondered aloud, why are Jews in Warsaw behaving like this? Why are they fighting? Couldn't they have waited quietly until the end of the war? Treblinka, Chelmno, Birkenau. She had never heard of those places. 1 year later, together with her entire family, she was in a cattle car, traveling to the black hole of history, named Auschwitz. But those places and others were known to officials in Washington and London, Moscow and Stockholm, Geneva and the Vatican. After all, by April 1943, nearly 4 million Jews had already perished. The Pentagon knew. The State Department knew. The White House knew. Most governments knew. Only the victims did not know. Thus, the painful question. Why weren't Jews warned of their impending doom? Jews of every description together began their inexorable journey to a fiery altar of unprecedented dimension. I saw them all, including the children, entering the shadow of the flames. Light is God's shadow, said the Italian philosopher Bruno, who burned at the stake in Rome 4 centuries ago. I say no. It is fire that is his shadow. The fire that consumed a third of a people whose memory of God is the most ancient in recorded history. Inside the kingdom of night, we tried to understand and could not. We found ourselves in an unfamiliar world, a creation parallel to God's with its own hierarchy, its own princes and hangmen, its own laws and customs. There are only 2 categories. Those who were there to kill, and those who were there to be killed. In Kiev, SS officers used Jewish infants as target practice. The only emotion they ever showed was anger when they had missed. In Romania, an SS officer beheaded 2 Jewish children in front of their mother. In her anguish, she held them close and began to dance. In Poland, the Iron Guard killed Jews and displayed them in butcher shops with signs, kosher meat. As you walk through the museum, as you look into the eyes of the killers and their victims, ask yourselves, how could the murderers do what they did and go on living? Why was Berlin encouraged in its belief that it could decree with impunity the humiliation, persecution, extermination of an entire people? Why weren't the railways leading to Birkenau bombed by Allied planes? Why was there no outcry, no public indignation, and the most awesome question of all? Why was man's silence matched by God's? The questions, in fact, are endless and will forever remain unanswered. Indeed, if there is an answer to the Holocaust, it must, by definition, be the wrong answer. Nor is the museum an answer. It is but a question mark. Every event connected with that period defies human understanding. It is not because I cannot explain that you will not understand. It is because you will not understand that I cannot explain. The essence of this tragedy is that it cannot be fully communicated. In one of my tales, an SS officer derides a young yeshiva student, telling him that if he happened to survive, his words would fall upon deaf ears. Some will laugh at you, he says. Others will try to redeem themselves through you. People will refuse to believe you. You will possess the truth, but it will be the truth of a madman. And yet, we are duty-bound to try. Not to do so would mean to forget. To forget would mean killing the victims a second time. We cannot prevent their first death, but we must not allow them to vanish again. Memory is not only a victory over time, it is also a triumph over injustice. And that is one of the lessons we have learned. We have learned that though the Holocaust was principally a Jewish tragedy, its implications were universal. We've learned that whatever happens to one community ultimately affects every community. Prejudice knows no boundaries. We have learned that although every human being has the right to be different, none has the right to be indifferent to suffering. Nevertheless, hatred continues to cause so much suffering in the world today, and we cannot tolerate the excruciating sights of this old, new war. Remember the loving, yet naive woman somewhere in the Carpathians, who together with most Jews of her town perished in a tempest of fury and fire? She was my mother.